screw mainstream. Like bodybuilding it's not exciting enough to be mainstream.
Switching gears, what advice would you get for a teenage bodybuilder just getting involved in the sport? What would you do if you could like maybe reverse time, look back to maybe some mistakes you might have made? What is maybe the top 3 tips or even the top tip that you would give a younger version of yourself or another teenager starting out who wants to get into bodybuilding and they're like, I want to bodybuild?
Well, remember, it's just switched now that a teenager has to be 18 in order to compete in the NPC. And that's where I kind of came up. So I definitely would, number one, prep properly, meaning give yourself 12 to 16 weeks to prepare. Never think, as a teenager, we always look at people like myself that were in the books and say, I'm not at that level. I don't know if I'm ready to compete. Remember, when you get chiseled up, no matter how, you're not going to have the maturity and, the obviously quality of size that you're going to see or even some of the guys that the top amateurs you would see on social media. You're not going to get that much quality, but once you rip yourself down and you come in great condition, I mean, that's one thing I would preach is come in top condition, learn the poses, be comfortable on stage, get someone to give you a great critique eye. Like I searched around the gym early on to kind of have people critique me. And I was fortunate enough, like I said, 6 months in, I was able to meet Chris Aceto, who gave me that eye, gave me that vision. I had that structure. But at the same time, like I did not let at that point bodybuilding consume me. Like I was still working a job. I was going to school at the time, pursuing a degree. And I was just focused on, this was a hobby because I wasn't sure where it would ever take me. So do not let it consume you. Prepare properly, know the poses, and definitely give yourself enough time to train for those things and have the confidence. Like, don't compare yourself to other people. Look at what strong points you have. Learn your poses around those strong points, hide your weaknesses. And any teenager, as long as you're in great shape, the divisions aren't that competitive. It's not like each division has, 10 guys in it, right? There's less and less teenage bodybuilders nowadays. And, that's kind of a fear of mine. Like, I don't like to see that.
Yeah, I guess we agree. Don't obsess over it and don't compare yourself to other people. I know when I started competing, there was no social media. I showed up. I didn't know who was going to compete. There could have been a guy 200 pounds or not. And you just do the best you can. If you start getting into supplements, the illegal ones, when you're that early, you don't know what you want in life. You just don't compare yourself to others. Compare yourself to you. Compete, do the best you can, and just treat it as a hobby. Have it be fun. I always did it because it was fun. They're like, why are you doing the show? I like it. That was why.
Yeah. I mean, it's great to see yourself change, but today I would have to mention that stay natural as long as you can, experience getting in shape and being competitive naturally before, I think that's too early. If you're 18 years old, then, I would definitely push yourself naturally as long as you can before if you make the choice to go with performance enhancing, right? And study it. I mean, learn it, because once you make that decision, it's really hard to go backwards with it. And, I just think it's too early on, and too many teenagers now have that vision of, oh, I need to do this in order to be successful. It's same thing with supplements. Like at that age, like you shouldn't be looking at supplementation necessarily more than you should a diet approach, right? You don't need supplements when you're starting off or, at a certain age. You can use those as you progress and become better and supplement them in with a great program.
I've always said that teenagers, you're going to experience gains no matter what. And for me, I always felt like extending the length of time that you can put on muscle is what's going to create your longevity. For me, I didn't take steroids until I got much older, in my 30s. So I was a young guy competing. I'm like, hey, I'm still getting gains. Why should I do anything? I'm doing all right. And I didn't really compare myself to like everyone else. If I'm getting better, that's all that matters. But nowadays, you swipe on Instagram and there's 20 guys that you're following that are 20 years old that are as big as I am right now. And they're just kids. So I think there's so much more pressure, and it's harder to stay away from that.
Yeah. And I think it's right in front of your face. Like, back then I used to pick up scrap magazines in the gym. They were $5. And Greg, I didn't have $5 to spend on a magazine. I'll be honest. I was a broke college kid. I was trying to afford my chicken breasts. I was eating canned tuna. You know what I'm talking about. I didn't have the outlet. I'd go to GNC. It was the only place that sold Muscle and Fitness and Flex magazines at the time. And I would sit at the rack for an hour or two and read the books. And that's how I learned. I mean, the first book I bought at 16 was Bob Harris's Beyond Built book. And it had all the training in there. So I kind of studied it long before I joined the gym. So I knew about training and kind of what exercises do. And these were focused around free weights, like we mentioned earlier in this interview. So we didn't have machines back then. I mean, some cables, but that's kind of how I learned. So I was a student of the game. And then as I went into it, you kind of learn hands-on, right? And that's kind of the approach that I was able to take. And, I found that the books gave me the best advantage in learning and taking the time to study it.
In studying bodybuilding, we all know that you pretty much have to take something to get at the elite, the top level. And we've had a lot of deaths in bodybuilding and things have been going pretty bad this last few years. Is there anything you think that can be done to, let's call it fix bodybuilding, to make it more mainstream, healthier? Is there a different direction that we could go to? Classic versus open? Is classic healthier? What do you think about all this?
It's a general question because every division has their, has their protocols. And I don't know how deep those go. I just know what I did in order to become who I became. And, I hear, of course, things, what people do. Has it changed a lot? Yes. But unfortunately, like you said, to get to the elite level, it's almost impossible. Not to say that you can't get, a pro card, or you can't get even to the Mr. Olympia natural, to be the top person. I think it's going to be more difficult to be natural, if not impossible, and be able to maintain that and have progression. And also, you got to remember, your recovery and having the patience and having the drive, the continued drive, like that's a big factor too. I mean, if you're not progressing, then it's really hard to stay motivated, right? I mean, that's the biggest motivator there is. So, people can beat their head against the wall, but if you're not progressing, that's something that you need to take into what you're doing. But it's just hard, man. I mean, we can't change. Everyone is individual. I don't think that there's enough knowledge. And if you said to me, Jay, like, what works and what doesn't, listen, it's all trial and error. There's no biochemist type people that have put together like the perfect protocol for what a bodybuilder needs to do. I mentioned, I think off camera, like, there's a lot of confusion on what drugs, like, hey, I'm using this to cut up, or this is going to give me more strength, or this is going to, listen, it's all derived off testosterone. I mean, that's the first cycle I ever did was basic testosterone. But listen, my cycles were one thing, two things max when I started, right? Today, I mean, I run into guys in the gym and they're doing their first cycle and they're on 6 different drugs. And I'm like, why? Well, I have this guy that's teaching me how it's like, well, that person shouldn't be teaching you to do that. Okay. That's the tough thing. That's the biggest obstacle that I see, but screw mainstream. Like bodybuilding it's not exciting enough to be mainstream. Like it's, when you're not knocking someone out or scoring touchdowns or, you're challenging and you're winning, it's a judgmental thing. Right. So it's a little awkward. People don't understand it because there's so much more that goes into just those bodies. The story has to be told. So that means like, if the media followed a bodybuilding, like a show, if it was nationally televised or it was on, cable or Netflix or whatever, and you could actually follow the progress of each person and what it takes to get in that shape, then we might have a chance that the vision of it is a lot different, but they only see the finished product when people watch it. So if it's aired on any kind of pay-per-view or whatever, you're not seeing the work it took to get there. So people don't appreciate it enough. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. People need to be able to see the progress, the work that goes into it. Like the UFC, to me, it got popular when that show was on TV, and everyone, you watch them and you're like, you have a vested interest in the person. You watch their training, they're suffering, they're crying, they're laughing, everything goes into it. Bodybuilding, you see them on stage and you're like, well, who wins? They all look amazing. But that guy's bigger, that guy's leaner. I don't know. You can't tell who wins. Very frustrating.
Yeah. So the Ultimate Fighter, you made a great point with that. I mean, that's kind of what showed. I mean, it showed the guys not even, but then it's gotten to deeper. I mean, you remember like the 24/7s or All Access series with all the boxers and everything else. Like, I think even hockey did it, like to show, okay, this is what goes on in the lead up to this monumental event. And I think that's where we're missing the media attention. It just needs to be like, we love these documentaries, right? But we need the documentaries in like real time that are happening now and leading up to these bigger events. I mean, that the Olympia would explode if that was the case, if they like highlighted all the athletes and they had camera crews, but the money that would have to be spent, we'd have to have some sort of broadcasting deal that would bring millions of dollars of revenue that will allow that to be able to be shown on a higher platform.
I think the only way to really make it popular is the athletes themselves have to make it popular themselves. So, for example, I have a larger following now, over 1 million. If I went and did a show, people are going to watch my preparation. They're going to see the eating, the training, and what I'm talking about, the mood I'm in or whatever. And then when you get to the final event, there's going to be people tuning in because they're like, I've followed your journey. I want to see how you actually make out. If more of the top bodybuilders did that, there would be much more interest. People would actually get to the show and they would have their favorites, be like, I want to know how this person's going to do.
Yeah, and that's why Bumstead's so popular. I mean, social media, he does YouTube. Regan Grimes, like you mentioned, I mean, he shows a lot on his YouTube. I mean, YouTube's our biggest outlet now, right? But like someone, we did that early with our documentary, like our DVDs, Ronnie Coleman and myself. We had 7-hour videos every year we would shoot. Living Large Trainer made my popularity through the roof. It was on bodybuilding.com. I don't know if you're aware of what it is. They came and they followed me here for a week leading up to the 2013. It was the year I came back and after, losing to Phil Heath and having the torn bicep and stuff. And they came here and planted themselves in my house for a week. And remember, this was only a week. And this was like, as I was starting prep, and it wasn't really like, oh, Jay's going to make a run at the Olympia. It was like, this is a life of a guy that's achieved greatness in bodybuilding. And this is what I have to do on a daily basis. And the young kids watch this and my popularity exploded. And still to this day at all these events, these kids come up to me and they say, hey, I followed you on Living Large Trainer, and that showed your lifestyle. And, of course I still do all the YouTube. I do my stories on Instagram daily. And like people do follow that. I mean, my YouTube channels. So like you have to stay active. And that's where I think a lot of bodybuilders want to have the mentality that I had, which was like, don't bother me. Don't talk to me. Don't like, just stay out of my way, which you can't in this day and age, because that's where your popularity is going to explode. If you expose yourself so people are visible, just like you're very consistent with what you do. And that's why you have such a huge following. People want to listen to what you say.
I feel like it's like you get in front of a stand and you say, I'm here so I don't get fined. I'm here so I don't get fined. You're a football player. And it's like, well, you need to talk to us because we are selling Super Bowl tickets based on you talking to the fans and just not speaking and think, well, I'm here to play football. And it's like, yeah, but with that comes some other responsibilities. So to me, being the Mr. Olympia, it comes with other responsibilities to try to grow the sport, to be open to talk, to document what you're doing and try to bring it to another level.
And we didn't have social media early on. So the magazines were our only thing. And like I mentioned, the DVD. So I think why I was able to have such a lengthy career is that I was able to pivot over to social. And Instagram really started exploding in 2012. And I was able to take advantage of that. Like I said, I mean, at 48, I'm still filming YouTube consistently. And, I have the podcast and like I said, I'm on social media every day. You think I want to film myself cooking my chicken breast after this interview, but I still do it because that's what keeps people motivated. I mean, you don't know how many messages I get a day saying, that what you do on a day basis motivates me. And this is people of all ages. It's not just people my age, even the younger generation. And that's what I thrive. That's what keeps me motivated, what keeps me training harder. And like, we have to all do it. So I always say the biggest thing I can tell people is, document what you do. Even if you're not popular now and you get 3 views on YouTube, eventually those videos will be there forever. And, you'll be able to have that, in your arsenal so you can continue to, put your message out there.